How's it going, guys? Petchcats here once again with MakeMarikaGreat's Phillip McKay.
Hey,
And for those of you who want to kill 3 hours, you guys can head on over to MakeMarikaGreat, who is now doing YouTube videos, and he has his own full set review for Kiznaiver, which
that's a
was
full
a
set analysis.
set analysis, the core card review, and all that good stuff.
Like,
But today he's over here with me, and we're gonna be doing another Kiznaiver full set review. So he gets to do this all over again, and with two people, now we get to have the back and forth discussion, which you can't really do alone. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and get right into it. So just a couple quick things before we start. As far as like the source for the pictures and whatnot of the stuff that we're going to be using, all the big pictures are from uut.jp. All the small pictures for the climaxes, bond targets, etc. are from Heart of the Cards, because their picture size is like way smaller than UUT's. And the card effects are taken from Heart of the Cards. I'm pretty sure they fixed everything since the translations first went up. We don't have a level 0 Utah that sends the top card of your opponent's clock to waiting room and then gives your opponent a free stock anymore.
pretty dank.
Thank goodness. All right. Now that that's out of the way, we're going to be doing it in the following order. So we're going to start with all the level 3s, then all the level 2s, all the level 1s, all the level 0s. They're not necessarily sorted by color in any way. Pretty much what I did was I just found all the level 3s, and then I put them in based on the order of rarity. So we're going to see the double R level 3s first, then the rares, then the uncommons, etc. TD cards are also going to be thrown in here. And then at the end of each level, I'm going to have the garbage page, as I did with my Gochiusa review, where I just put everything that I didn't feel is worth looking at individually. And cards are going to be placed 4 to a page, so you guys can just like kind of weigh the options side by side as we go through them. And of course, we're going to have the rating system. I should actually pull that up now that I think about it. I didn't actually put it in here at first, so we're going to do that real quick. If I can find it. Where are you? No. All right, it's in here we go. All right.
The ratings.
The ratings, boys. All right, so these are the ratings that I'm going to be using. So at the top, we have the Bushi Please. I guess this is what you would call the TTT meta rating. This is cards that I think are very strong or interesting, and aren't necessarily like things that we've seen before. And I could give this to the 1-0 Nico, but for a completely different reason than is listed here. For the great rating, this is just like the rest is pretty much self-explanatory. You have great, good, meh is kind of like meh is like cards I could see people playing, but garbage is just like don't run that card. All right, so now that we have everything out of the way, we're gonna get right into the level 3s. If Philip is okay with you, I think what we're gonna do is like split maybe like level 3s and level 2s into one video, and then level 1s and 0s into another. Does that sound?
Yep.
That sound cool? All right.
So,
So we're gonna start with 3-2 Nico. This is a card that's had a lot of controversy between the community, mostly because it has a decent effect and a not so decent cost. You gotta discard that crappy 1-0 Nico, and then you give everything on your field cancel burn. So as I've said in my like card of the day reviews, the 1-0 being the discard costs makes this a lot worse. The fact that you activate the ability on climax play means that you are able to get more potential burns, and you don't have diminishing returns on multiple copies of the Nico, but it's hard to play multiple copies of the Nico and get all their climax combos off in the first place. You also need to have more stock at the start of your climax, or when you play the climax, as opposed to generating stock on the fly during your attack phase, and that's what makes it different from similar cards like EO from Schoolgirl Strikers. And draw two, drop one, yeah, sure, you can dig for Climax or 1-0 bad Nico, but personally, I'm just not sold on this card. Philip, any thoughts?
So I think I ranted about this for 15 minutes on in my set analysis. I'll just give like the condensed version, which is people who think this card is good have not actually played it and tried to get a 10 stock 6 card combo off. It's just like, yeah,
I
you
think
can
that's like
dig, right?
unbelievably
Yeah,
unrealistic.
it is. Like, there's, I don't know. One of the arguments that I've heard is that, like, oh, Kaleidoscope can do it. Yes, but Kaleidoscope also goes through its entire deck twice in one turn. This does not. I mean, like, yes, you dig with this, but you don't need to dig. You need to excavate.
I
And
think the biggest the biggest not the biggest problem, the biggest difference between the two is that Kaleidoscope, like the payoff is so much higher than this
oh
card.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Like
And
Kaleidoscope, you can secure a game from like 2 something. This card probably has a hard time securing a game from like 3-0.
well, I mean, it's the same as all, so like you can take that how you want. But I think just the major issue I have with this one is, so like in a vacuum, like level 3, if you get it off, it's good. But actually getting to that point is a little bit unrealistic because you're forced to run at least, well, you're forced to run 4 bad level 0s, 4 bad level 1s, and I'm going to say 2 to 3. I'm going to be really generous here. 2 to 3 bad level 0s, which are the bonds to the level 1. So you're dedicating 7 cards in your deck to making an average effect like less bad. I don't really know how to explain that
Yeah,
in better terms.
I think the best way to describe it is like I put good question mark here as the rating,
Yeah.
and it's just because this card in a vacuum without any context of like what you have to discard, like if we didn't know that the 1-0 was like absolutely like disgustingly terrible, then you just look at this card and you're like, okay, this seems pretty good.
Yeah,
Like
it's playable,
I could
yeah.
definitely see myself playing this. And you look at that 1-0 that takes up deck space and you're just like, kill me.
Pretty much, man.
All
Yeah, I
right.
think yeah. I mean, I would put this in the meh tier. The good question mark. It's
Yeah.
good meh 0.5.
Okay. So next, let's move to the right. We have the Honoka level 3. I think the way that if I had to describe the set, it makes its best plays at level 2. Not only with this, but with the Katsuhira, being able to just like take control of the board, I guess.
Yep,
So
I think this is a really strong card.
yeah, it's very plain. It's like a lot of early drop healers that we've seen in recent times. It's got the same early drop condition. It's got a power ability, and you get the heal. It's nothing too exciting, but it's definitely not something that should be overlooked.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's also it's the fact that it has a bond. I think is almost irrelevant. Like you would play this card anyway, and
I would play this card anyway.
yeah.
This is definitely a great card.
So I think there's not much to say. It's like it's super generic, but it's also very consistent. Like it's shown this profile is very good.
Yeah. Okay, so moving down to bottom left, we have probably one of the most thought-provoking cards in the set. I think this is definitely one of the cards that has a lot of people like just wondering how this set's gonna work or what the most ideal list is gonna be. I feel like the 3/2 Tenga Bodyguard is really like the toss-up of like how. Yeah, I feel like it's just like the card that's making people wonder how they're gonna build the set. Like, do they run this or not, and like what do they run it with?
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is a card that is oppressive to play against because Bodyguard isn't. It's not an effect that's been good. Um, and like Log Horizon, let's stay in the real world here. Bodyguard's not an effect that's been good, so decks in the current meta aren't built to play around Bodyguard. They're just sort of built to aimlessly whack into things at level 3 and not really care about the board. You just sort of play the clock.
Yeah, because if your opponent's dead, then like it doesn't matter what
Yeah,
your
the board
board
doesn't
is.
matter. Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting just design choice. It's a super plain card, but it's like you've got alone. It's just a good card in the context of a deck. I think it's really great, and it's good that now because Tenga exists, you're not automatically pushed towards the 3-2 Noriko build. So I mean, both of them are very oppressive to attack into, but Tenga and Noriko are oppressive for different reasons. Tenga is oppressive because you're worried that you won't win, whereas Noriko is oppressive because you're worried that you're going to lose. And I think those two different, like the dichotomy, is actually quite interesting. But it's a strong card, yeah.
Definitely. Okay, so next we have the Yuta, which is, I guess we'll call it a more practical finisher between like him and Nico.
Yeah.
This one, he is also pretty plain. He's a gold bar clock shoot, which is something that we've seen a lot. His power level isn't amazing. He gets 1k if you have 2 or more other Kizuna, so that brings him up to 12k with the climax. He's going to need some help from back row. And his second ability, being able to cycle when you play a bond. We talked about this in the review. Phillip was actually on that review with me, and we both agreed that like you should probably be like set up at that point anyway. And if you're at a point of the game where you're playing this clock shooter and going for the win, why are you playing bonds?
Yeah, and I think the deck that this goes in, which is the mono green build, is actually it's really strong at level 2 because you are playing the stock charge combo, and so you do have a lot of stock, so you can play multiple of the 3-2 that's right above it. And because the 3-2 Honoka is so strong, it makes this card better because it allows you to push your opponent quite steadily and gives you the like you might be able to maintain field through your opponent's presumably response turn to you early playing things. So it actually works really well on that build, and you have the power to deal with things. You're not necessarily going to capitalize on the bond thing, but overall it's pretty solid. So in that deck, it's great, and it's a really simple and consistent deck to play.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that like if somebody were to like get into Kiznaiver and they were like newer to Weiss Schwarz, you would point them to like the Yuta Honoka build.
Yeah, it's actually so consistent. I mean, if that in itself, from another set, would be considered the main build.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think so too. Yeah. I'm inclined to agree there because they're both very solid cards. They're nothing
Yeah,
spectacular, but they're also not hard to use.
yeah. Well,
And
it's nothing
yeah,
spectacular, but also 1 year ago, this would have been considered a top deck, like this mono green build.
yeah, probably.
So it is still very strong. Yeah.
All right. So next up we have red and blue. Uh, so first we have the Katsuhira. This is going to be my first Bushi please rating of the review. I think this card is just very strong with the way he just controls the pace of the game at level 2. So he has the early play if you have 2 or more of the 0/0 Shiori Nasuka in your memory. On play, you get to pop stuff for free, and the thing you pop is based on the level of the card you mill off the top of your deck. And he has a climax combo with a gate that lets you salvage and gain power until the end of the opponent's turn. Personally, I don't think the gate is even really necessary. I feel like the reason you play this card is so that you can pop stuff. The climax combo is just an added bonus. You're still getting a very big body. You're disrupting your opponent's field. You're basically able to take 4 cards off of their field, where in other circumstances you're only able to take off 3. And that 4th one might just, because it's a back row pretty much all the time, depending on what deck you're playing against, this could make the difference between a win for you or potential loss for you.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is your fried chicken. This is your original recipe. This is this is your 10.95 family feast box. Like this is your staple in so many builds. And I think, yeah, look, you're probably right about that you don't necessarily need the gate climax. I really do feel like it's good just to keep it alive, if anything, because if this does stay on board for more than one turn, it's obviously there's a lot of value there. I think the the one thing I will say about it, obviously this is like it's bushy please, but the condition to actually play it is quite expensive. I mean, it's expensive in the same way that Onodera is expensive. It is a 2 stock investment
And
to
that's
play your first one, and then
before
everyone
playing
after
it.
that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
two stock invested before playing it. So, but the payoff is very, very strong. And you also have to take into consideration that the utility behind the 2 stock you're playing prior to playing the 3/2 Katsuhira is very, very good for the deck. And because really the only milling power that the deck has outside of Shiori and Asuka is the Yuta, which is a very good card, don't get me wrong, but it is also combo dependent on other elements of your deck. I feel like the Shiori and Asuka is definitely a card that should not be underestimated on its own. And you should definitely not be looking at that level 0 just from a perspective of, I want to play this 3/2 Katsuhira early, because it is very good on its own as well.
Yeah, I think the only downside to that is that you, in the long term of the game, if you consider the amount of stock that you're going to generate over the game compared to the amount of stock you're going to use over the game, this is an expensive card. So you're not playing this in multiples if you want to play a stock heavy end game. And that's one thing to consider when you're building.
Yeah. Alright, so next we have the TD healer. It's nothing spectacular, but I probably would have just given it a meh rating if it didn't have a bonder, because I think just having a bonder has value in itself, especially in this set.
Yeah.
So like I said, nothing too spectacular, but it's definitely not something that you should just overlook.
Yeah, I think it's, it's acceptable. I'm never going to see a build with it, to be honest. Yeah. I think you're more likely to see a build with Nico, which is a good question mark to meh card, than you are to see a build with this in it. But it is, it's fine. And in the context of the trial deck, it's perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, there are a lot of good level 3s in this set to look at. It's actually quite hard to figure out what the heck is going to be the ideal.
What you doing, Pat?
Okay, so next we have the Chidori. I guess we'll say my opinion of this has come up a bit since the initial review. That was in the first week. I think if you're playing a set that is able to keep a lot of value in hand by asserting the board at level 2, then this makes the cost of healing to stock much less relevant. Being able to deal damage for that high a cost, I think, is a little bit questionable, but you have the option there should the situation arise where you need it.
Yeah, I think the one thing, this was a really underrated card by a lot of people initially. I think the one thing that I saw that made me rate it a bit higher, and I think people are coming around to now, is that it is a burn on attack, which you can use when you're attacking into an open slot. And when you're playing the sort of bodyguard endgame, where your opponent's going to have an empty board, and you're going to have a lot of time, sort of having just a tick for 1 damage, and then a tick for 1 damage the turn after. That's enough. It's sort of it's exactly the correct thing that you needed, just to help you close out games a little bit more than swinging for 3/3/3 every turn. And I think that's nice. I think this was an intentional design choice, actually.
I will add though that if you're playing that sort of attrition based endgame, you do have to be careful of whether or not you are using this ability, because if you do use 3 stock for 1 burn and then you don't kill them, then that's 3 less stock that you have for potential defensive combo with the bodyguard. So you do have to watch out for that.
Yep.
Also, this has arguably the best bonder in the set.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Okay. I'll pay that, I guess. It's a crazy strong bond, so that also bumps it up a lot. And I think that just means if you're gonna run the 1/0 bond, it's worth running this card.
Yeah, just to have the target.
Pretty much.
Okay. Next up, we have one of my favorite cards in the set. Not necessarily because she has blue hair, as some of my viewers are going to point out. I actually like Chidori best, but that's just me. We have the 3/2 Noriko. This is an on-play healer with a climax combo with the pants, where you get to put a marker from your waiting room underneath this, and then during this card's battle, if your opponent deals damage to you and you don't cancel, you can drop the marker and deal the same amount of damage to them. So in Phillip's review, he described this as sort of a delayed restander, and he also brought up how your opponent does get a chance to like play heal abilities in between you attacking and them attacking you, so their health pool could potentially go up. I would also like to add that this card gains more value the more copies you have, because let's say you only have one copy of this. That means that they have 3 attacks to try to kill you before you even have one shot with the Noriko to try to kill them back. And so let's say they're at like 3-5, and you have one Noriko. If they can kill you with all 3 attacks, then you haven't even gotten a chance to use this yet. But if you have 3 copies of this and they're at 3-5, then that means that any attack that they land on you could be potentially them dying, if that makes sense. That being said, this has basically the same property as like the scry if you don't cancel, whereas the lower health you are, the more chances you have to use the ability, and the more openness you have with your play, I suppose we'll say that way.
Yeah, I think this is a card. I would also give this the Bushy Please, because I think it fits so well against the current meta. Because so the reason for this is because of the during battles involving this clause. So what that means is against cancel burn decks, you have a lot of instances of damage where you have the opportunity to essentially play your opponent's cancel burn against them, and you can essentially hijack any good effects that your opponent has. I think that's a really, really key point in this. The other thing is that it's also free. Like the investment for this is 6 dock and a climax, which is really easy. I'm gonna leave you for a bit. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think the biggest thing that people are gonna have to figure out when playing this card is how to play their level 2 game, because I feel that this is a set that really gets a lot of mileage out of playing very, very high value level 2s.
Yeah.
And so whether or not you'll have enough stock to field 3 of these is the real question.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, I personally don't know what the right build for this is, but I know just looking at the card, and given that there are no major finishes right now that also heal, off the top of my head, except if you consider the Axel World 1, I guess. Given that
I guess Shinon would be the best example. That's like a pretty textbook healer finisher that players in both metagames are definitely familiar with.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a strong enough deck, but well, sure. I think, I mean, like, I'm talking more about like the Yamis, the Puyos of this world. They don't really have, well, they don't have heals. So that means that your opponent is almost always going to be behind against your level 3, which means it's actually quite scary for them to attack into this, because they usually can't kill you from 3-0, but you will actually have the opportunity to kill them from 3-something. And I think the other thing to mention, I did mention that the opponent has a chance to heal in between you attacking and getting this sort of like extra damage, but they don't have a chance to heal between you doing this extra damage and you attacking. So that's another consideration. The timing on this is very subtle.
Yeah.
Also, the bond is trash.
I am playing that bonder. Well, we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah.
So, moving on now to the last 2 level 3s of the set. I probably should have just like put that niche for this Noriko, because I like took the level 1s and I took the level 0s and I called those niche as well. So in retrospect, this should probably just say like niche, because this goes into the Gomardine deck. But in that deck, it is your damage. Well, I mean like that's your damage, and then you can play the level 3 from the previous page as well.
Yeah, it's truly. I mean, it's.
There's really not too much to say here, since like if you play that deck, you play this card. That's pretty much a no-brainer.
Yep.
So we can just talk about the. Actually, I think were you on with me for the 3-2 for this 3-2 as well? For the card of the day review,
yes.
I think
yes,
so. And I believe the argument I gave with that is that one card is just not enough. You have much better, higher value early drops, and this is not worth running over those.
Yeah, I think the only potential consideration for this is that it's the smallest investment early drop. So potentially, because obviously the condition is basically put a card which you're running 4 of into your flock.
The card is so good in your hand, though.
Yeah, it is, yeah. But it is very easy to get it onto the board. Sorry, into your flock, and therefore it's easy to get this card on board. So it's very sort of splashable. In that, like, it fixes for its own color with its own with its own condition. So I guess that's one thing about it. It's potentially okay as like a one-off in some sort of build, but I don't really know. I haven't really messed around with it too much.
I don't know. I think this is like this is a TD level 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Okay, level 2s then. I guess we'll just go straight into here. 2/1 stock bomb gets my Bushi please for yellow.
Okay.
This is like anti-change any kind of suicider is already great. The fact that they put a bond on this to a relevant card is really, really, really great.
Pretty much.
There's
not
really
much more to say.
There's really there's nothing else to really even say here. It's a good
except you. No, yeah, go.
It's just a strong effect with a strong effect.
Yeah, I think the one thing though is you aren't, at least in my experience, you don't really ever use the bond effect because you get Tenga in so many other ways. But it is there in case you need it. So.
You get the value off of other cards as well. Ones that combo with bond, like Yuta.
Yes.
Okay, so we have the 2/1 minus soul counter. When you use the backup pay 2 to choose an opponent's level 2 or higher character, it gets -1 soul for the turn. The thing is that you have so many other defensive tools that are much stronger than this and are also cheaper that I'm not sure that this card is warranted to be played. So personally, I would probably just play a 3k punch for a slight more defense.
Yeah, I mean, the rationale I can see behind this is if you're running gates or pants triggers and you need a way to pay them out at level 2 going into refresh, then this is the card that you want to have to allow you to dig 3 deep into your stock during your opponent's turn. So that's why you would run this card if you're running. I guess that's the rationale for running this. I'm also not entirely sure about it. I mean, I haven't actually played with it in my deck yet, so
I think if you're doing that, then you're just like killing the stock that you should be using for more impactful cards.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. To be honest, I think you can refresh with 7 or 6, and you can be fine in this deck.
Yeah. Okay, 2/1 Honoka, or not 2/1 Honoka, 2/1 Yuta that bonds to the 3/2 Honoka. And it gives level 3 and higher in front plus 2k. This could be a very relevant card, specifically for cards like Tenga and the Noriko. Both of those cards, their abilities rely on them surviving through to your opponent's turn. So if you're not able to get over things that your opponent already has on their field, then that could be a very big problem for a deck that has a defensive setup like those cards. So the fact that this has a bond to a very good 3/2 healer is also relevant. Not like we've said before, not necessarily that you have to use the bond, but having the option there is good. It also triggers your other cards like 0/0 Yuta, and I think this card is just a solid play overall. And I think it's the higher end back row that would probably see the most play.
Yeah, so I'm a bit mixed on this one because it's good. Obviously, it's very good in the green build because it gets you the card that you want. I don't think you run it in a Tenga-centric build because I don't want to pay 1 stock to get 500 more power than Hisomu, and I can't front row it and still give the power to center because obviously only center actually matters. And in that build, you're actually happy to side into level 3s because you can stall longer than they can. I think in the Noriko build you actually run, if you're going to run a power support, you run the Sonozaki one that has the married life effect, as in the 2-1 level assist that also has the married life effect, because that gives you a total of 2500 just off the support plus the 1k from your thingy what's it from your climax. So I think that's what you would use in that build. So I'm not actually sure if this has a place. But it does. If I don't think this has a place based on its assist. I think it can have a place based on its bond, and the assist is kind of like the gravy.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds fair enough. Next we have the 2-1 climax combo that changes into the clock shooter.
Can we just skip this?
I will leave an annotation somewhere that links to the point of the card of the day review where we talk about this, I guess. It'll be right there on screen. If you haven't clicked it by now, we're gonna change slides. So here we go.
Sad card.
Oh, hey, look, we just talked about this card.
There we go. That's
Okay, so I would just like to point out something real quick. CG has a 2-1 level support, which has, when you play Climax, choose one of your characters, give that character plus 2,000 for the power, plus 2,000 power for the turn, in exchange for being a 4/5, and I think that is very unfair, and it makes me very sad.
Yep, it's pretty sad, man.
That being said, like Phillip said earlier, this card is definitely an option that you can look at in your deck.
Yeah, look, I think you run this in blue, because I don't know if you're running green in those like level 3 setups. I think it's fine. I think it's fine overall. I think it's just pretty solid, so I think you definitely run it.
All right, as long as we're on level supports, I guess we'll move down from that one to the 2-1 TD support. This has a bond to the 3-2 healer from the TD. It's a discard bond, and it has level support. This doesn't give the same punch that the other two supports do. The bond is not exactly to the most popular card that you're going to be seeing in Kiznaiver decks. Despite that, I can't really give this a meh rating because I think it's definitely something that could see play, has potential to see play.
Yeah, I think the only reason you've run this over the other two is because you value the bond effect, purely because it says bond on it. So when you play it down and you have the Utazasa in your back row, you can trigger that. I think that's the only reason you'd run it, because primarily because you value the mill. Otherwise, I think you'd run any of the other cards because, of course, Hisomu gives the same amount of power to center.
Yeah. Although the center argument is for like your Tenga deck.
Oh,
right?
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, next up on the right side, we have two vanilla counters. One's red, one is yellow. One has a bonder. Oh boy. Compared to the 2-1, 2-5 Tenga Punch from like 1 or 2 pages ago. Maybe it was last page, I'm not sure. Short-term memory loss, boys. Compared to those, these give 500 more power in exchange for not having the pay 2 to give -1 soul effect. I think either is just a serviceable level 2 counter. This set doesn't have like a sat counter or a refresh counter or anything like that, so nothing too special.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, let's see what we have next. Oh boy, garbage page. So I know Phillip.
Oh, see, when you
Phillip
said
liked
garbage page, I thought you were going to just post your deck list.
Oh my god. I'm gonna post your deck list. Oh baby. Alright, so special note to specifically the 2-2 Chidori, the third card on the top section, which I know Phillip was talking about in his video. And I think you can see it down in the bottom right, I have it listed there. I don't think just like level 2 beaters in this set are just worth playing in general, just based on the power level of the 3-2s that can come in early, just being superior in general. So
yeah, no, that's fair. The only reason that I make a case for the 2-2 Chidori is because it's a functional 2-1, and 2-1-2 souls are always something that you have to consider, especially in the 3-2 Noriko build where you may not actually have the colors to consistently run one of the other early drops, and this might actually be a pretty serviceable way of just maintaining stock so that you can do stuff. So that's the only reason I mention it. And obviously the 2/1 green Honoka all the way in the top left is usable in the those like Nico Maki Ruru builds where you use it as some sort of like long-term stock generation investment thing. .jpg.
I don't know. It's a refund of like 1. You have to tap it.
It's not fantastic.
But you guys can go ahead and check out that card for yourself. I think that pretty much covers everything for level 2s. So we will cut here and come back with level 1s and 0s.